think he's going to talk about capital flows, and hopefully that will include some of his experiences in Pakistan.
Thank you, John. First of all, let me thank Bani for inviting me to this important forum, although this is the last forum. But from the cast of characters who have been playing role in this forum for the last 30 years, it is a remarkable enterprise to have the thinkers in the field of development work together for such a long time. So I must pay a compliment to those of you who have been associated with this enterprise for such a long time. It's very difficult in the feet of all of you, because the younger economists, the younger development practitioners are more narrowly focused. They are more technicians and the techers rather than the thinkers like yourselves. And that is which I think we're going to miss after the round table is disbanded. So I think that's a pity in some sense. I like to preface my remarks about what is really happening in the international capital flows by saying that development by its very nature is something which is uncertain, and it is highly risky business, the development. But the people, the donor community who are giving the money to developing countries, expect very precise, deterministic outcomes. And this tension between the uncertain and the risky nature of development and the kind of expectations of the donors is being consistently behind this whole debate of the official capital flows. Like venture capital firm, you have one success story out of 7 firms which have been sponsored by the VCs. But they are able to offset the losses of those 6 firms. Now, if you take whole of Asia and some parts of Latin America, I think this 50 years of development has actually produced more successes than have been failures. And therefore, the rate of return on the donor's money for whatever it is worth has been recovered in that sense of a venture capital. That is the formulation which I think is missing right now, because as Francis very rightly pointed out, the time horizon for development which is taken by the donors is so short and so narrow that we dismiss the achievements and move on to something else while leaving this particular part of our development process incomplete. So what was considered in Turkey as a disaster as far as the steel making was concerned is now a success story. Similarly, the entrepreneurs of India are now, who all were nurtured under highly protectionist environment, are acquiring companies all over the world. So I think the time horizon, the uncertainty, the riskiness of development does not neatly fit in with the expectations of the development flow. So I'm very happy that the proportion of the official development flows approved by the parliaments and subject to the bills is decreasing over time, and other forms of flows are substituting. Even in developing countries, the workers' remittances have become more dominant as compared to the official development flows, and they are actually accruing to the poor or marginally poor population, and therefore helping those families to send their kids, and not only their kids, but the kids of their own extended families, to good school, to avail of good health facilities, have drinking water which keeps them away from all kind of water-borne diseases. So that's a very positive phenomenon which is taking place even within the developing countries. In my own country, for example, we were under the IMF program. And I used to negotiate, now I was on the other side of the table, on the kind of narrow-mindedness of the IMF programs. Every quarter, they wanted us to meet certain targets. And either you try to pretend that those targets have been met, or you are in default of those targets. We decided that we are just going to go with the IMF program, and even before the creation of the program, we said goodbye to them. And we went to the international capital markets, and we were able to get terms, no conditionalities, and that we helped to offset our current account deficit. And our external debt to GDP ratio today has gone down from 50% to 25%. So if you use the capital flows from private sector in an imaginative and in a productive manner, you don't need IMF or you don't need the other official assistance. And this, I think, is a very important lesson. But you should have a program in which you believe that you are committed to deliver. You're not cheating yourself. That you're taking the money, like we used to do in the 1990s, in order to fill in the balance of payment gap, and after first tranche, we will not do anything which we had agreed with the IMF. That's cheating your own country. And I think that, to me, is the distinction. The other point I want to emphasize is that the capital flows into the world are not flowing from the north to the south. If you look at the sovereign wealth funds which are being created a la Singapore, in China, in Korea, in the Middle Eastern countries, they are now being considered as a new threat to the international capital markets. And Larry Summers wrote a very, I would say, a persuasive argument in Financial Times, where he says the whole idea of international capital markets is the private investors and the private issuers. If you break this link and you have the government investors and you have the private issuers, the profit maximization is the main motivating factor of the international capital markets is completely destroyed. So this is a new phenomena which is coming in, because the reserves of China alone today are $1.3 trillion. And that's financial current account deficit of the US. Therefore, it is no longer the same kind of capital flows we were talking. The World Investment Report of UNCTAD has come out with a whole of south-to-south investment, and the southern multinational corporations like the Tatas and the Mittals of this world, who are actually acquiring assets in England, in Europe, in the United States. Therefore, I think we have to go beyond our traditional way of thinking, where everything was actually focused on official development assistance. The future roadmap 2000s should not be conditioned by what the pattern was in the past. It has to be looked into these new dynamic sources and the new originations of the capital, which is making. Pakistan today is getting $5 to $6 billion of foreign direct investment. And where is it coming from? It's coming, of course, from the United States and UK, Europe to some extent. But there's a capital surplus in the Middle Eastern countries who have generated $600 billion of current account surplus. And the rate of return on the US Treasury bonds is 1/3 of what they get by direct investment in Pakistan. And that's why everybody in Gulf countries is trying to buy assets or come up with the greenfield projects in Pakistan because the rate of returns are quite high. So the south-south capital flows, the reverse flows from the south to the north, and the remittances have changed the entire texture and the taxonomy of capital flows. And this is the direction in which we should try to think about the development, and this to me is a very pleasant experience as compared to a situation where, when I used to work as chief economist of Africa, and my favorite Ghana, where I started my career as an economist, was threatened by the IMF, followed by the World Bank. At that time it was ODA in the UK and the CEDA in Canada and everybody, that because you have fallen short of your targets of the IMF for this quarter, we are going to withdraw all your assistance. The budget of Ghana completely went crumbling and went up. Are we helping the development process? And I was a guilty party to that. Or we are helping Ghana on a long-term path because development does not take place overnight. And I think this, to me, the changing position of the capital flows is a positive development as far as this whole South and North is concerned. Thank you very much.